Reverend Jeremy McDonald to the platform.
We should probably add in that bio now that he's finally actually been late to an actual speaking engagement that he has had. Because I used to pride myself on not being late. So stages of love is what I was going. I was thinking, how am I going to talk about stages of love when I first came up with that idea, and I spoke about it on a YouTube video probably about 6 months ago, and of course I went into agape love and the different stages of love when it comes to that. And then I've been really thinking about the word love. It's been kind of on my mind a lot lately over the last maybe year or two, because most of us, when we think about love, we think about the love of our family members, we think about the love of the people we care about, intimate love, that I'm sure you remember the old song from a Disney movie, "Someday my prince will come." Everybody know what I'm talking about? That kind of love, right? And then the love of your children, grandparents, parents, coworkers, that kind of stuff. But what I really want to talk about is what love is and what I've come to understand what love is. Love is the frequency or the energy that shapes the universe. Love flows. And how does love shape the frequency of the universe? How does it shape and flow through the universe? So we have some misconceptions about some words, and part of that is because of the modern day interpretation of them. Like one of my favorite ones is when I say in groups of friends, I'm speaking at church tonight, and they're like, "Oh, church." I'm like, "Do you know what the word church means?" And they'll be like, "No, I have no idea." Or they'll give me their interpretation of it, and I'll say, "Church just means people of like mind coming together." And they're like, "Wow, really?" I say, "Yeah, so technically in my house we're gathered together, we're a church." And so the other one is fear. Fear is always sometimes misinterpreted. So there's a passage in the Bible where, I think it's in Psalms, and the psalmist is talking about how he is fearfully and wonderfully made. Does anybody remember that passage in the Bible? And so I had a friend of mine call me up and say, "How can you be fearfully made? And what does the word fear in the Bible mean?" I said, "Well, a lot of times it means that he's in awe of the awesomeness of God and how God created him." And so the other thing, so love, because we have that interpretation of the Disney movie, the song I just probably very badly sang, is that we think it's just that. We think it's about intimate love. And so now, there's another passage in the Bible that talks about love is patient, love is kind. Everybody remember that one? You just read it?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow. Very cool. So I was thinking about this because it's interesting, because I just had a Facebook post that I'd had pop up from, I wrote it 2 years ago, and here's what my interpretation of love was. Love is loving somebody for who they are and not what you want them to be. Love is also speaking the truth to somebody that you love, even if it's hard for you to say it. If it's the truth, then how can it be wrong? Somebody said to me, "But no, Jeremy, sometimes you have to lie because, you have to spare people's feelings." I said, "Sometimes we have to tell them the truth so that they can evolve." And I said, "But Jeremy, do you think that who am I to say what makes them evolve?" I said, "Do you feel it in your heart and soul that you need to say that to them?" "Yeah, I feel it really strongly that I need to say it to them." I said, "Well, then go say it. Go tell them." "Well, I'm afraid of their reaction." Well, their reaction might be very intense. It may not be very welcome to what you're going to tell them. And so sometimes that's necessary, am I correct? And so now there's a way to say it. We don't have to go up to somebody and say, mean things to them. Truth is never mean, especially if it's coming from compassion and love. So we can give compassion and love and truth, and sometimes it hurts. All of my friends and the people around me have permission to tell me the truth. Because the one thing I don't want to be is this reverend or this minister or speaker and think that I've got all the answers or I've got it right. There's a bunch of televangelists that have fallen down because of that. Am I correct? Okay, what I wanted to practice is, what I want to teach people is that we are out here, we are on a mission, we are on a journey of awakening and growing and expanding our consciousness. And how do we do that? By letting go. And love is about letting go. Sometimes, is everybody parents in here? Grandparents? Or have family members that they're close to? Have you ever had to let them go before? Have you ever had to look at them and watch them do something you know is going to hurt them and not say a word? Or you've said it before and they keep on doing it over and over and over again, and you watch them do it and you finally just say they're going to have to figure that one out on their own. And then when they come to you, love is not saying, I told you so. Love is saying, come on, let's talk about this. What did we learn from this? What did you gain from this? Where did this take you? So this is a very hard lesson that I'm sure all of us have learned. I was very fortunate to have some very strong spiritual teachers in my life. One of them went to this very church. Her name is Reka Stasiak. And she taught me at a very young age. She looked at me when I was about 23 years old and said, you're going to be a great teacher. And I'm 43 now. And at 23, I thought, how is that even possible? The night before, I got so drunk at a bar. How am I possibly going to be a great teacher? I was in what? What was I in? I was judging myself. Am I correct? And so she said, don't you look at what you are now. Look at what you are going to become. And if you knew Reka, you know she said that with a very thick Polish accent. And so one of the other things she taught me is at a very young age is that I would get so angry with friends and family, and because they would come to me. I've always been that type of person where people came to me for advice. I said, I give them this advice, or these clients, I give them readings, and they never listen to me. They keep on coming back to me over and 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 over again. She goes, it's not your place what they do with the messages that you give them, with the wisdom you give them. You plant seeds. That's your only job. And so you have to let go. So love is giving the wisdom, speaking truth, and then letting it go. Because why are we attached to the outcome of somebody else's soul journey? So how the universe is flow and how it creates and is the frequency of the entire universe, it lets go. Think about the cells in your body. Do you think that the lungs on your body or the cells in your body look at the heart and say, I can't let go? I just can't let go. I can't have these cells flowing around because I'm going to miss you. Or because you're not doing what I want you to do. The lungs, you're not doing what I want you to do. That just doesn't even make any sense, does it? The body works because it works. Am I correct? Okay. So if one part of the body says you can't do that or you should do this, and then gets mad because it doesn't do that, then the body stops working. And you know what they call that? Cancer. Does that make sense? Because stagnant chi happens because we are so filled with judgment inside of ourselves and fear, the modern day interpretation of fear, and afraid to move. So if we were in love, if we loved and had truth within ourselves, and we faced truth within ourselves, and we said, no, whatever is the divine plan or the divine will of all that is. Because there are sometimes people have to go through journeys that help them awaken. There's a gentleman by the name of Douglas Harding. He was a philosopher back in the 20s and 30s. And he came up with this concept called the Headless Way. And he said, if we could just cut off our head, then we'd really have a lot of peace in our lives. And so this Headless Way has become it's actually pretty significant. It's lasted this long. There's a gentleman that teaches, and now Douglas Harding has passed or transitioned into spirit. But there's a story on his website of a man that's in his 70s, and this man was in and out of prison his entire life. And now at the point when he wrote this story, he was going to be in prison basically for the rest of his life. Now he'd gotten into trouble with the law so many times that there was no way he was ever going to get back out. He had reigned his marriage had failed. His relationship with his daughter was stressed, and basically she didn't want to have anything to do with him. He wasn't going to get to see his grandchildren, nothing. It was basically him in prison, and that was it. Well, he started studying the Headless Way. And what he had learned is that even though he'd done all these things that and making him end up there, judgment of himself and tearing himself up wasn't going to change the situation. He did need to hold himself accountable within himself to find healing, but he also needed to forgive himself. So what he did is he had such a profound experience about learning how to love himself, let go, forgive himself, and forgive others, the people that had hurt him at a very early age. And he had found out truly what love was, that he started changing people within the prison. That it was so significant. He changed so many people, especially young men that were going to get out, that one young man wrote him back and had now put himself through college, got his life back on track, was married with children, and was so happy that this man had affected his life when his time in prison. And as well as the fact that now his daughter at one point started to come and visit him, and he got to start seeing his grandchildren. So he started to be able to have a relationship with his grandchildren and his daughter again. He was never going to get out of prison, except that now he was changing people's lives so that they would never end up back in prison again. Talk about a walking angel on this planet. That eventually he saw who he was. And so how does that happen? Why did I tell you that story? Because sometimes when we look at people, we make judgments about where they're at. And so it doesn't mean that people are not held accountable for their actions. That's not what I'm saying. It means obviously he was held accountable for his actions. Except that his journey took him to a place that now he was affecting people on such a great level that he was bringing light into darkness. And I think that's pretty profound. So the other thing I found is interesting is that in this modern, one of the things we just entered into the age of Aquarius that some people, if you're an astrologer. And a friend of mine called me up the other day, and she was in judgment of another person, another healer. And she said, I just don't understand some of these healers. They're just out doing whatever they want. They're just out partying and not meditating, not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it was a whole string of things. She went on for about 20 minutes, and I just listened to her. And I said, okay, I understand where you're coming from. What I would like you to understand, and just I want you to consider, is that what if that was their soul journey? What if, when they go out dancing, their energy lights up so much that they impact with frequency, the frequency of happiness and joy? What if that affected consciousness? Well, I don't think it's that at all, Chair. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, if everything is in divine timing and divine order, if we're all one and everything is a perfect plan, then who are we to judge what that is? I know that this mind of mine has no idea of what God's plan is. Sometimes I get glimpses of it if I get down deep enough into a meditation, and I get a very small glimpse. And yes, as an intuitive and giving readings, sometimes I get very small glimpses into people's lives, and then I can see some things. But truly, Socrates said it the best. The only thing that I know is that I know nothing. So love is understanding that you are going to make mistakes. Another word that I find very interesting that people like to use to make other people feel guilty and judge is the word sinner. I've come to understand the word sin is this: missing the mark. Why is that so interesting, the word missing the mark? Because if God dwells within everything, within us and all around us, then who are we missing the mark with? We're actually turning our back on ourselves. If that makes sense. Because it's interesting, we've all made mistakes before, and then you'll hear somebody that makes a mistake, and then they'll say, well, I shouldn't have done that. That was just really bad of me. Oh, and you can feel the guilt heaping on from old programs, the way they were told how to think. And I'm like, wait, calm down. What do you mean you shouldn't have done that? Well, it caused all this. Okay, well, what did we learn from that? It's an opportunity. It is not something that we want to beat ourselves up about. So let's try a little bit of forgiveness and practicing what I call self-awareness. So the nature of my message and everything I talk about is about self-awareness. So if we could just practice this great game called self-awareness, meaning if you spent 5 minutes of every day loving yourself and asking yourself, what were my opportunities today? Where could I become more self-aware of myself? Where could I have handled something differently? Where could I have chose peace instead of anger? If I went into anger, why did I go into anger? What caused me to go there? Is it old programmings? Is it old programs from my past lives or current life or childhood? Is it my inner child acting out? If my inner child's acting out, does it need love? Have I not been paying attention to it? This is what I call the self-awareness game, and this is what love is all about. So we can go into the stages of what love is on the different levels. When we look at love, agape love is what? Unconditional love, am I correct? So unconditional love is loving somebody in yourself, even of things that you don't like. You don't have to like the act. One of my spiritual teachers says to me, he says, Jer, he says, you don't have to love the personality or the ego, the one that's acting out. You want to love the soul. The soul is what has the journey. And so that's, to me, where we get caught up. Does that say that I don't judge? I absolutely do. And then, guess what? At the end of the day, when I'm practicing my self-awareness, I have to do what? Where could I have loved more? Where could I have judged less? So these are things that we can practice every day. And guess what? It gets easier and easier. So the issue is that we've interwoven our words with words like sinner or with guilt. I have a young woman that I was working with a while ago, and we were just sitting at lunch, and she had asked me to come to lunch with her, and I sat down with her, and I said, hey, how's it going? And she's really excited. And then her face started sinking. You know that feeling when you know there's something going on? And I said, what's wrong? She goes, I don't really want to talk about it. And I'm like, well, you called me here for a reason. So we sat, and we started laughing and carrying on. And I said, okay, are you ready to tell me what's going on? And she starts to tell me. I said, that's just an opportunity, girl. Don't worry about it. Let's look at what happened. Let's practice this self-awareness together. And she drops her head and she goes, no, I'm just a sinner. I'm like, and who told you that? And she said, well, the pastor of my church says when we do this, it's because we're sinners and that we can't help ourselves. I said, he also probably told you that our goal is to become more Christ-like. Didn't he say that? And she said, yeah, he says that. I said, that's like 1 foot on the pedal for gas and then another foot on the brake. Does everybody know what that means? It's called cross-purposing. Has everybody heard of that term? To say that we are striving to be more Christ-like, but then that we are sinners and there's nothing we can do about it, makes zero sense to me. How can we be on a path, but there's nothing we can do about the path? We're walking down the road, but there's a wall in front of us. We can't go any further. We can't tear down the wall. Does that make any sense? No. So, if we're here to become more Christ-like, if we're to follow that path or that idea, then it is very apparent that, yes, we can achieve that. And St. Francis of Assisi was one of those that actually taught us that. So everybody ever heard the legends of St. Francis of Assisi? He would go into there were stories of where he would go into the woods and he would pray and be in meditation. And people would see a light emanating from the forest or the woods where he would be at. What was that light? It was the truth that he was facing within himself, the powerful love that he had for himself. So if the universe is shaped by love, it's because love is ever flowing. It's not filled with attachment. When it comes to intimate love, somebody said to me about 2 or 3 years ago, it says, you know, people don't break our heart, Jer. They break our expectations. It's because we built a story in our mind about this person. Someday my prince will come. And we are so excited. The story is built in our head. And then we're upset when they don't actually meet up to that story. So we have to love people for who they are, but not for what we expect them to be. That was something my mother taught me a long time ago because I was mad at a boyfriend. And she said, Jer, if you're going to love the man, you have to love him for who he is and not who you want him to be. And I was really mad at her for that. And so I walked away. But you know, a lot of times our parents teach us something and it doesn't sink in until years later. I think she told me that at 22 and it sunk in at about 36. So I'll wrap up here in a few minutes because I don't want to take too much time, but I would just want to leave with this. When you're going out and you're looking at people and you're working with people, be patient. Everyone in this hall is healers. And tell them the truth with compassion. And if you're working with a lot of young people like I do, I work with a lot of people that are millennials, 18 up to about 35. Well, I guess millennials and young Generation Xers, is this. At that age, they're afraid. They don't even know what the truth is sometimes. Sometimes people in their 50s don't even know what the truth is sometimes. So I get at 43, sometimes I don't know what the truth is. But what I'm getting at is that you'll ask them questions and then they will lie to you or they will distort it. And later on, you'll figure it out. You'll be like, so what happened there? Why didn't you tell me the truth? Well, I didn't want you to be disappointed in me, and I was scared. I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Calm down. That's the monkey mind going right now. I need you to sit down and listen to me. I care about you. We came together for a reason. As a teacher and student, friend, older friend, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And because I love you, I am going to tell you the truth that you made a mistake. The mistake is just an opportunity. So let's take a look at that. And let's grow with that. No, I'm not leaving your life. No, I'm not going to scream at you. I am going to hold you accountable, though. And so you go on with that. And I learned that very truth with a friend of mine named Virginia Drake. And this is the last story I'll tell you, is that we had been teaching workshops together. And I was driving down to Bradenton to get her because she stays in Bradenton. Well, at that time, she stayed at Bradenton when she would come into the area. And I had somebody had wrote out a check for $40 to me at one of the workshops that we taught. And I said that I was going to get that check and I was going to send her a portion of it. And I had just forgotten about it, to be honest with you. And so about a month later, she came down and we were teaching workshops. And she looks at me and she'd forgotten about the check and I had actually lost it. And in my mind, I had thought I was going to keep it, instead, even though I had told her something different. And I was going to keep it to pay for gas to drive back and forth to Bradenton. And she says, whatever happened to that check? And I said, well, funny thing you should tell is because I'll get myself in trouble by telling the truth. And so I said to her, well, I was thinking I was going to keep it for gas, and then I lost the check, and I literally just found it last night. And she goes, well, why didn't you just tell me you needed gas money? Well, I didn't want you to be disappointed in me, and all this other kind of stuff, all the things that I would have done when I was 12? And here I am, a 30-something-odd-year-old man. And so she says, Jer, next time just tell me you need gas money. How are we going to work together if you can't even tell me something? And it was a huge lesson of trusting another person, of being vulnerable. And she goes, and you know what? I was going to give you $50 for gas, so you just shorted yourself some money. So she says, you keep that check. And I laughed, and we moved on. Now, how often in our life have we ever held back on something because we were afraid of somebody's opinion of us? What I want you guys to do is go out there, and I want you to just live your life to the fullest. Hold yourself accountable. Enjoy your life. Love others. Be patient with yourself and others. Forgive yourself and others. Do whatever you want. Go out dancing. Go horseback riding. Go on a vacation. Spend a little bit of money. It's okay. And enjoy your life. And also meditate. It's just there's a balance. Jesus said everything is in what? Moderation. So if we go out there and we live our lives in moderation and in balance, there's nothing we can't do. There's other people's judgments are typically because they're jealous of what you're doing or they don't understand it. A friend of mine, I was sitting down with a radio show host. He was an older gay male in his 50s, and he was talking about a friend of ours, and he said, I just don't understand. He has a 20-some-odd-year-old boyfriend, and they're going out, partying all the time, to the clubs, and I just don't get it. Like, isn't he gotten over that? I'm like, maybe he hasn't. What does it matter? He said, but he's supposed to be spiritual. I'm like, who says spiritual people can't go out and dance? And he said, well, I don't know. I just don't want to do it. I said, for you. You don't want to do it. He does. Let's leave him alone. And let's love him. That's all I have, guys. Thank you.